So let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
I believe that Jeffrey Epstein had information and I was going to get information. You get information from people where you can. I've interviewed narcotics, drug traffickers, and others, and that doesn't mean that I'm their friend.
That is Stacey Plaskett. What a joke. Getting text messages from Jeffrey Epstein, a person relationship, they have cell phone numbers, but she's a prosecutor? Dumb. Boomerang. The Epstein files begin to leak out, and it's the Dems that are front and center. Why I think more than just disgraced Harvard and Obama and Clinton official Larry Summers is just the first lefty to pay the price.
Number 2.
This administration is pitting our uniformed military
and intelligence community professionals
against American citizens.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
So that's Mark Kelly, Alyssa Slotkin, Jason Crow doing something I think is borderline treasonous. The Democratic vets show their radical side by putting a message out to the military that, in my view, borders on treason and also looks for them just to, I guess, turn against Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump. The blowback is just beginning.
Number 1.
We did reach out to the White House, and my team reached out because of a commitment that I made to New Yorkers, that I would be willing to meet with anyone and everyone so long as it was to the benefit of the 8.5 million people who call the city home and their struggle to afford the most expensive city in the United States of America.
Yeah, Mayor Mamdani, elect, I should say. Guess who's coming to lunch? Mamdani coming to visit President Trump at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Let's see if this odd couple can last 3 seasons. Let's bring in Senator Tommy Tuberville, now Armed Services Committee, and who's likely to be the next governor of Alabama. Senator, welcome back.
Morning, Bryan. How are you?
I'm doing great, because some good news. They thought 50,000 jobs in September because everything was shut down. We had no numbers. Looks like America added 119,000 jobs. Unemployment ticked up to 4.4%, but a big improvement in hospitality, construction, and healthcare, while cutting back about 100,000 federal jobs. What do you make of this?
Well, first of all, you can count on these being correct. You know, the first 4 years I was here, Bryan, under Joe Biden, every one of these reports was wrong. Every one of them. And they were embellished, and it gave actually the people across the country hope. But at the end of the day, after every report, 3 months later, they come out, well, we were a little bit off. We're 50% off here, 80% off here. It's amazing. These are true reports. It shows our economy is good. It's not great, obviously, with this shutdown that Schumer orchestrated, put us in harm's way to some degree. But I was glad to see this happen. Very positive, and American people going into the holiday season knowing that there's more and more jobs opening. So,
Senator, why do you think they're more accurate now? Aren't the same people doing this that were doing it under Biden?
No, not quite. And there's oversight. We got oversight on it, Bryan. We saw the mess. We understood that. Now that we're in charge, we have oversight on this. And, they might not be perfect, but they're not going to be 50% off, 60% off, and it's not going to change in 3 months. So we need accurate data, to run this country. But obviously the Democrats don't believe in that.
So a couple of things. If Fox does a poll, and I know the president doesn't love our polls, and I have nothing to do with it, so I wouldn't take it personal if you don't like him either. But Fox News does a poll. They ask people, are you satisfied with the economy? Only 25% are satisfied. In July, the number was 32%. In January, 30%. They ask, is inflation under control? Completely, 2%, mostly 16%, somewhat 29%, not at all 52%. And have you been helped or hurt by President Trump's economic policies? Helped 15, hurt 46. What does Tommy Tuberville think?
Well, first of all, we look back at inflation. It was 9% about 3 years ago, and now it's much, much lower. And going to go lower. The problem people need to understand is when President Trump took over, we had flushed out $7 to $8 trillion in this economy that we should never have spent. And that's where the inflation's coming from. They made the dollar cheaper, and it was way out of control. These people, the Democrats, they never had a plan. So for 8-9 months now, President Trump's trying to get his head above water from the things happening overseas to the border to the economy to the tariffs. People complain to me in Alabama about tariffs. And I say, listen, here's the deal. We're $38 trillion in debt. There's no way we can tax the American people to ever even come close to paying a small percentage of that down. tariffs have to do it, and it's your only chance for taxes to just skyrocket. So President Trump's got a plan. Scott Bessett's got a plan. But again, we've got to dig ourselves out of this hole. And it wasn't put in there by the Republicans. It was put in there by the socialist, communist Democrats. And it's going to get worse if we listen to this nonsense. Let President Trump do his job. And in 6-7 months, you're going to see a much better economy in this country. And President Trump understands what he's doing. And thank God he works 18 hours a day to get it done.
Right. And work ethic, and nothing can substitute it. Forget about talent. If you have the work ethic and the good people around you, you're going to be successful. Same thing in sports. Yeah. So for the longest time, I haven't been talking about the Epstein files. One of the main reasons is this is an old story. The victims are terrible. I feel bad for the victims, but this is not about the victims. Tom Massey and Ro Khanna looking out for the victims after not saying a word about it all their other years in Congress. Don't get me going on this. And this seems to me to be the ultimate boomerang. They're going for Trump, but as more and more paperwork gets released, that seems to be blowing out Democrats like Larry Summers, the lawyer over at Goldman Sachs, this woman, Stacey Plaskett, a congresswoman from the Virgin Islands. Where is this heading, do you think, as this comes out?
Well, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad for a lot of people that really wanted it to come out. Here's a process. Again, as I said earlier, President Trump, he's had more on his plate than any president ever, just trying to save the country and really save the world. But and he said, listen, transparency, we're going to release the files. Now, I've talked to Kash Patel and Pam Bondi. Here's the deal. You've got to do a little bit of investigation. You just can't throw it out there and end up with mud on your face if some of this is not right or wrong. So President Trump wanted a good investigation, look into it, make sure everything is kosher here. Let's don't jump a gun because there's no reason to do it. But the Democrats, they just knew President Trump was involved. So they kept hammering him. So what happened? Okay, you want it out? I know what's in it. We're going to let it out. Hakeem Jeffries, get ready. And so he released it last night. You're going to see it slowly come out. And now there might be some Republicans in there, but it is going to be detrimental to the Democratic Party. They wanted it. You got it, folks. Have a good holiday season. And if you're crooked, let's put you in jail.
So here's what James Comer on Oversight said, cut 19.
I subpoenaed the estate, and lo and behold, you saw with the last batch of documents that came in, there were emails that implicated Democrats. 2 Democrat members of Congress, Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader, his campaign was soliciting funds from Epstein, even told him they would meet privately with Epstein if he would make a big enough donation.
And we know that Trump name kept popped up because the guy hated him. He was maneuvering with Stacey Plaskett to try to nail Michael Cohen to hurt Donald Trump. The reporter from the New York Times, desperate to hurt to Donald Trump. Michael Wolff in 2015, Jeffrey, you're the one that could stop him. You have the silver bullet. So you have journalists working with Democrats and Epstein to stop Trump. And that's why he's mentioned early and often.
Yeah. John Wayne's, my favorite saying from John Wayne was, life's tough. It's a lot tougher when you're stupid. So you're seeing a lot of this right now. These people are just, they would sink their own ship to get Donald Trump. They would do that. And so they don't want to work for the country or work for the American citizen. They work for the Democrats and the Communist Party. And so good luck to them. And, I'm proud of President Trump. But look at this. This thing went through like lightning. Went through the House and went through the Senate. President Trump signed it. That's how really things should work around here, but they don't. But this one did. And it's going to pay dividends for the election next year for the Republicans, because you're going to see a lot of people that's going to be caught in the tailwinds here.
So the average person, especially in Alabama, if you have Obamacare, your deductible is like $6,000 or $7,000. You know that almost all these private companies like Cigna and Aetna and United have dropped out of the exchanges. The whole premise behind Obamacare is falling apart, but yet 54% of the country still look at it positively. So with the rates going up, you just worry about the people, not just that voted for you, just especially if you're going to be governor, Senator Tuberville. So right now, I hear there was a serious effort, bipartisan effort yesterday and maybe today to try to fix this on the fly to try to ease the pain on health care for some of the people. Could you let me know, do you know what happened at all with Senator Cassidy's committee?
Well, they're trying to come up with a plan to ease the pain on the American citizens. Bryan, Obamacare has been a complete disaster, and it never should have come to the point where it has to be subsidized by the American people. Folks, you citizens, you are paying twice for this health care. You're paying illegals for their health care. Health care is a disaster when it comes. We're losing doctors, we're losing nurses, we're losing surgical centers. We've gone to just big hospitals, and the insurance companies are getting subsidized right and left. It is not, Obamacare was never for the American people. It was for politicians and for big corporations, and we got to get control of it. We used to have the best health care system in the world, but now it's a disaster because of what we call the Unaffordable Care Act.
So here's what Senator Bill Cassidy said came out of yesterday. You don't have much time. Cut 26.
We're having a Senate Finance Committee hearing, and we'll hear about the situation. But let's elaborate on the president's plan. There's $26 billion available, if you will, for what Joe Biden put in as enhanced premium tax credits. The Democrats want to send that $26 billion back to the insurance companies. They take 20% of that for profit and overhead. That's law under Obamacare. They're allowed to take that 20%.
And he went on, cut 27.
The president and I want to send 100% to patients to put into an account to spend on the health care that they want, not just the health care that the insurance company allows them to have. And by the way, with this money, they can pay their deductible and their copay. Under the Democratic plan, there'll be maybe a $7,000 deductible before you get into the insurance. Under the Republican plan, there'll be $1,000 to $2,000 to pay for that health care before you kind of start paying out of pocket for your deductible. It works for the patient. It gives power to the patient. I'm with the president. This is a better plan.
So I'm sure you've heard some of this, Senator. So your thoughts on that and the fact that Democrats signing on to it, maybe being a part of it. If it's a Republican plan, you know they're just not going to take it. So, no. But could it be, do you think they're playing ball here?
They're not going to play ball because it takes money out of the corporations and gives it back to the citizens to have a health care account. That's the way it should have been all along. But the Obamacare wanted all the money to go to corporations, insurance companies, and just try to drive out the middleman. And give money to the PBMs, give money to the drug companies. That's not what this is about. It should be about the American citizen first and foremost, and that's what this health care account is all about. President Trump wants to instigate that, but the Democrats want to give it the subsidies to the insurance companies.
So Senator, do you think, how many senators do you think, they know it's a problem, right? We're a year out of an election. So do you think there's anyone there on the left that would say, okay, Senator Cassidy, you were a doctor. Rick Scott, you ran hospitals. Barrasso, you were a doctor. Like, how do we do this? Is there anyone looking just to fix it?
Yeah, well, we're trying to give them an alternative. But here's the deal, Bryan. Up here in Washington, D.C., once you get a plan, then you have to market it, then you have to sell it. I think that's one of the worst things that we do as Republicans because we don't have the bulk of the mainstream media that will help us sell it. So we're going to spend money on it. And we've got to make the American people understand what we're trying to do. We're trying to get rid of this nonsense of Unaffordable Care Act and give people money to where they can actually afford health insurance and get the best health care and get the best health care in the country.
Lastly, Senator, are you going to try? I know you and Joe Manchin were trying to work out something with college sports and getting some regulation. They want the regulation. You know all the coaches, former coaches and players. You have such credibility. Have you thought about doing something? Because it will be embraced, I think, by college sports about the NIL and paying players. Yeah,
it's a disaster. And it's getting worse.
Yep.
One thing, there's no education in it. I've talked to the president many times. He and I are working on a plan in just one area to help it, to slow it down. I'm all for players making money. It was a disaster. NCAA that caused all this. They should have given revenue sharing years ago, but they didn't do it. And so now the players are getting their own money. That's fine. But we've got to put education back into this. We've got to quit letting them transfer every year because you'll never get a degree. It's not about education anymore. I'm from to be able to get in the best opportunity. But once you sign that contract, you got to uphold that. We're teaching the wrong things in sports now. It used to be one of the best things going, but we're teaching the wrong things. Again, let them make money. I'm all for that. But we've got to instigate some kind of rules and regulations. We're working on it. Hopefully we can get it done soon.
Do you have a committee?
Oh, yeah, I've had committee. Joe Manchin and I worked on it for 2 years with Ted Cruz and the Commerce Committee's working on it. Nobody wants to agree on it. But I think at the end of the day, we need to do some kind of executive order for a few years to give it a shot. Hey, here's what we're going to do for a few years, and if it works, then you implement it. But somebody's got to be convinced of it.
All right, good. Executive order. Just whatever you do. I've never seen a league or any situation where they're saying, please regulate me. Senator Tommy Tuberville, best of luck in your run for governor, and thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
You got it. Back in a moment.
Under the deals being signed this week, the world's two leading energy superpowers, America and Saudi Arabia, are partnering on energy like we've never partnered before. American Saudi companies represented here today are joining on liquefied natural gas, infrastructure, constructions, and making both of our energy sections, our sectors are becoming so strong.
And the president yesterday at an investors conference, Kennedy Center, with Saudi Arabian's Prince, MBS, and they pledged, I think, $570 billion to various projects. And literally, you didn't have to go anywhere. Oracle was there. Apple was there. You had Goldman Sachs was there, J.P. Morgan. So, everyone was represented so they could do instant deals with the head of their companies. Neil Chatterjee was chief of government affairs at Palmetto, is there now, former chairman of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission under President Trump, former senior advisor to Mitch McConnell. Neil is back in studio. So, Neil, your thoughts about this Saudi deal? For the longest time, the biggest thing was, could we get the Saudis to, to pump more oil? Let's have them control the price. Now it seems like we have a very integrated relationship, from AI to oil and gas, obviously, and now military.
Yeah, look, this is a seminal moment in foreign policy. I think, the president is, he's not someone that's kind of beholden to norms and the status quo. And obviously there's controversy when it comes to dealing with the Saudis. Ask Rory McIlroy, who turned down, like $800 million to play on the LIV Tour. There's controversy when it comes to Saudi, but the president is, looking at America's interest and where he can broker relationships that are going to better enable things like energy, like powering the AI boom. And he found a partner in the Saudis. I also think it's relevant that the Saudis came to the table because, we can now match them when it comes to energy. Historically, we have been, kind of dependent on the
70s, especially. Remember,
we've been dependent on the Middle East for our energy, for our oil. We are now an energy superpower here in the U.S. thanks to a lot of the deregulatory steps combined with innovation that have enabled us. I was very proud during my tenure at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. I think we approved about a dozen liquefied natural gas export facilities, and now the U.S. is a dominant player in the space. And so the Saudis have to come to the table because we've got leverage.
So we're refining at a good rate. No one's saying the refinery's a problem. We're pumping oil at a good rate. No one says that's a problem. So having said that, we're looking for gas prices to come down. And I also got calls from truckers who tell me it's diesel. Diesel is above gas. Here's what Senator Markwayne Mullin said is the reason. I got a lot of calls last week about diesel. Diesel's for the trucks in. Diesel's above gas. And I think it's because of the sulfur regulations, because sulfur's bad for the environment, and they got all these sulfur regulators on. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I drive a diesel every single day. Before we were in Congress, we had a whole bunch of trucks, semis on the road every day. Diesel has been higher than gasoline now for almost a little over a decade because of environmental requirements. There's a lot that can be done with that. I've talked to Secretary Duffy about this. I've talked to Lee Zeldin about this multiple times about what we can do about regulations to bring down that cost.
So what is the challenge with diesel? Is it the environment? Is it the sulfur?
I mean, you know, regulatory policy definitely has an impact on price. I also think demand is part of the issue. You know, we've got the refining capacity, we've got the supply. I think, look, this administration, to their credit, they're not getting credit for it. You know, everywhere you turn, people are talking about affordability, and they're criticizing the administration for not being focused on affordability. Energy is at the core of when it comes to affordability. People focus on gas prices in particular because it's evident. They see it on giant signs, you know,
yeah, it's
every
not high,
mile.
but it didn't come back as
low. And so people are critiquing the administration. To me, the bigger issue is electricity prices. That's where I tend to focus. That's where my expertise is. And electric bills are rising. And I think that is giving folks
Isn't that a state
pause.
thing?
It's somewhat states. We do have vertically integrated utilities throughout the country who are in states where, you know, they set the rates, but you also have competitive power markets. That's what the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission that I ran, we oversaw those competitive power markets. And what's just happening right now is you've got a combination of factors. Some of this was driven, quite frankly, by the Biden administration. During the Biden administration, my former colleagues at FERC took steps that I believe to be political in nature. They artificially suppressed capacity prices. This is a really wonky, technical, nerdy thing. But the bottom line is they tried to accelerate the retirement of fossil generators to open up markets to cleaner energy. And the end result of that is now we have demand for electricity spiking because of AI and data centers needed to support AI and streaming services and crypto and Bitcoin mining. All of these things require a lot of power. So power bills are going up, and the Democrats are trying to pin that on the Trump administration. But the reality is we're reeling from decisions that were made by the Biden administration that are still hurting consumers.
So they're talking about nuclear. Just back to the Saudi deal real quick. Some people are getting nervous. Hey, do we really want to bring nuclear energy to the Saudis? Chris Wright, who's the energy secretary, brought that, answered that question, cut 23.
There are concerns about the Saudis have long wanted to, enrich uranium domestically. There are concerns about that because it can be used for either civilian or military purposes. Is that something that is going to be addressed in this agreement?
No enrichment in this agreement. This is just for civil nuclear construction of a power plant, American technology, American companies to build a very large nuclear power plant in Saudi Arabia.
And how do you feel about that? I heard if you're going to use enrichment, the way the UAE does it, you take the enrichment out, you bring it in, you take it out. They don't hold on to it. That's the way Iran agreed originally to send their enriched uranium to Russia for a while for a huge price.
Yeah, we've done this before. Look, I was a young congressional aide during the Bush administration when we struck a civilian nuclear deal with India. And, it's had a positive impact. Look, nuclear power is our single greatest form of carbon-free, clean baseload power. And so opponents of this who simultaneously claim they care about the climate, look, I care about the environment. I want nuclear power. I'm supportive of nuclear power. We need to do everything we can to expand our utilization of nuclear power. And folks who are being critical of this, in my view, are hypocrites, right? You can't simultaneously say you care about the environment and be critical of nuclear
How
power.
about this? China is now the leader because they went to the COP convention over in Brazil? We didn't go first time. And China now is the leader. But China's building a coal plant a week. I mean, they have special dispensation. They don't have to pay any carbon tax credits because they're looked at as a developing nation. So John Kerry was on C-SPAN and talked about his great love of climate change, which I think people are sobering up to it from Bill Gates on down. Cut 25.
You saw what happened in Jamaica. You see what happened in California. You see what's happening around the world. Everything we are doing, those of us advocating for this, does not come out of any ideology, any party, any philosophy. It comes out of physics, science. This is about physics.
Is it? A hurricane is do we have hurricanes before we had power?
Look, what Secretary Kerry has never understood is he believes that government is the solution to these kinds of problems. I am a firm believer in markets, and that's been the problem is they've tried to put their thumb on the scale to influence markets. The reality is, like, we are deploying clean energy at a fast rate here in this country, not because we're trying to solve for some governmental equation, because it makes business sense, because it's economically sound, because the costs of clean energy have come down and consumers are now finding it more attractive and reliable. And look, when your electricity bill is spiking, you know what's a good alternative? Residential rooftop solar. You can get off the grid, take control of your, energy costs and demonstrate savings. It's not governmental policy that's driving these kinds of things. It's what consumers want. And I think the John Kerrys of the world have, quite frankly, set us back because they've tried to bring the heavy hand of government down.
And they kept talking apocalyptic in ways. The world's going to end. And we think to ourselves, well, what are you talking about? But he made a whole generation crazed. They actually would have trouble sleeping. They're anxiety filled. They've been told by their science teachers in grammar school and junior high and high school that we're irresponsible to be driving a car or getting in a plane. And how dare we, and that's why you have these activists stopping pipelines. When you think, what are you upset about a North Dakota pipeline for? Does anyone understand the science behind it? It's because of people like that. And they make a ton of money from this. Al Gore, how much money has he made from climate change?
Yeah, I mean, it's about politics. It's about moving people. They thought it was going to be a political wedge issue. It would have been better for the planet. It would have been better for humanity if they hadn't politicized it. If we had just made it about the economics, about people being able to have clean energy in an affordable way and not layer on this kind of apocalyptic rhetoric. I honestly think by politicizing climate action, they
hurt it. Absolutely. They made it political.
They made it political.
So the same with the conservatives, when they grab something and people go, oh, that's what the right wing thinks. So I think to myself, well, no, that's what's good for the country, but it looks like a right-wing principle. I'll give you an example. There might be elements of Obamacare that Republicans signed on to, but it's so polarized. If they agree with anything, it's going to be their political detriment. That's why to do health care, they got to do it right, starting now. They got to do it together. They need to cover on both sides. How do we handle our grid? We keep hearing our grid is overwhelmed. It's about to get truly overwhelmed. We're building more power stations. If I asked Neil Chatterjee, how do I fix the grid? Or how do I rebuild and get a new grid? What would you do?
I would move to more distributed generation, virtual power plants. So when I was at FERC, I moved this order that I'm very proud of. FERC order 2222. My daughter's birthday is February 2nd, so I kind of named it after her with all the twos. What it does is it enables aggregated distributed energy resources, think electric vehicles, rooftop solar, advanced appliances, to be compensated for putting power back onto the grid. I think we're going to see this huge surge in demand for power being driven by AI. How we meet that surge in demand while keeping electricity affordable and reliable, to make sure that when Americans hit the switch, the lights come on, that on the coldest day of winter you have heat, on the hottest day of summer you have air conditioning. In order to do that, I think we need to move to a more distributed grid. The tools are all there. We've got to do some smart policy. We need to build more transmission lines in this country. We need to build more natural gas pipelines. We need permitting reform. You mentioned China building a coal plant a week.
Can we do the permitting reform?
We have to.
Oh, is it through executive orders? You have to go to Congress?
I think we've got to go through Congress. I think there's actual momentum in Congress on this. I actually think AI is going to be this variable that kind of unifies us on energy
crazy thing,
politics.
Neil. For the longest time, Silicon Valley left-wing causes, right? Silicon Valley gets so burned with social media, the pandemic, everything like that. They felt like the oppression came from the left. Now they're open, obviously, to the president. They're attending all his conferences. Then you get this other wing, the AI guys. The AI guys are less political. So it used to be left wing, left coast, Silicon Valley. But I think it's so blended now. I'm hoping it transfers to Congress. That don't stand against AI. Don't stand against power. Bill Gates comes out and says, listen, I was wrong. The world's not going to end. We got to be smart about this. So I'm sensing that AI is apolitical. What are you hearing? Because you're a Washington guy.
Yeah, we've got to do a better job of making the case for why AI is important. It's too easy.
But it needs to be powered, and you can't stop it. So I don't think
power is the limiting factor. Power and water.
Do you really have to make the case for AI at this point?
I think so.
Really?
I think a lot of people I talk to still think AI is about making goofy cat videos or enabling high school kids to cheat on papers. I am firmly in the camp that I believe AI has huge national security implications, that warfare in the late 21st century will not be fought by human beings, but will be fought by drones and robots and AI. We have to win it. We cannot allow the Chinese Communist Party to beat us in the AI race. And in order to do so, we need a tremendous amount of electric power.
And the Chinese are way ahead of us on power.
We got to catch them. And so that's going to mean a reawakening on energy politics in this country.
Can you imagine if a left-winger, green-focused president, we'd be destroyed?
The political left has to recognize right now, in order to win the AI race, we cannot do it without fossil fuels. We're going to need at least natural gas for the foreseeable future, and that's going to mean more gas turbines, more gas pipelines, and the political left has to accept that. The political right, however, also has to understand we can't do it with fossil fuels alone. We're going to need solar and storage and geothermal.
So you take politics out of it,
take the politics
and find out
of
what
it.
wind can do, and you find out what solar can do without selling out your conservative costs, right?
100%.
That's what we got to do.
And we got to make it about national security, not about apocalyptic scenarios.
And an energy secretary can go a long way in doing that. Maybe a politician can't, but an energy secretary can. Burgum understands it too.
Yeah.
He's got an energy portfolio. Neil, always great to talk to you. Your expertise is needed more than ever. Neil Chatterjee, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Back in a moment. Let's bring in Congressman Bryan Steil. Hey, Congressman, welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
First off, the Stock Act. What's in it, and why is it taking so long to get it passed or on the floor?
Well, we had our hearing yesterday. I think that's a huge step forward. We haven't had a hearing on this in Washington in way too long. And what we are doing is moving forward to make sure that we actually get this into law. What's the principle? That no member should come to Washington and financially benefit off of insider information. And if we look back at how the Stock Act performed since it was put into law 13 years ago, I think everyone knows that there's a real opportunity here to make real substantive and dramatic improvement. If you want to go and trade stocks for a living, there's a place to do that. It's called Wall Street. If you want to come to Washington, to Capitol Hill, you should be here to drive forward an America First agenda and get this country back on track. You should not be engaged to make a living on trading stocks.
So what do you do if you have a successful business career? You know, you're on Wall Street, you decide you wanted to run for office, right? That's how you made your money. Day traders said to say they want to serve. They win an election. What should they do?
Well, that's the exact question and why we want to make sure that we get this right, that we close out loopholes, but we also give an avenue for people that have had a successful career in the private sector that they can still come to Washington. But what we have seen time and again is some individuals come to Washington and then leverage inside information to their financial benefit. We've seen members of Congress that have gone to jail and been convicted of insider trading. We had the former Senate intelligence chair call their broker in the days before the COVID pandemic became fully understood by the American people, and he sold all but one share of stock in his entire portfolio. And so we have to make sure that we get this right, that we give an avenue for people that have been successful in the private sector to still be able to come to Congress. We need more business people in Congress, in my opinion. But we also have to remove the bad actors, those individuals that think they're coming to Washington to simply make trades on inside information to profit them and their family.
So, you know, it's pretty insidious. How about Nancy Pelosi? They estimate she made $130 million during her time in Congress. That's a 16,930% return. She did not want this act passed, but now that she's leaving, she's going to support it. She's going to get away with this?
Well, I mean, this is exactly why we need this legislation to provide confidence in the American people that members of Congress aren't enriching themselves off of illegal trades. One of the things we talked about at yesterday's hearing was how the Stock Act requires reportings in increments. So it's actually really difficult for the American people to get a full understanding of exactly what trades are taking place. And the reports come 45 days after. And so we have a huge opportunity to revise and amend this law to make sure that we're instilling confidence from the American people that members of Congress aren't enriching themselves, and to truly prevent members of Congress from being able to leverage inside information for their own financial benefit.
So where's it at? You had your hearings. What are your colleagues saying? There's reports that you're getting pushback on both sides of the aisle, or do you think I'm just going back prior to your hearing? Do you think after your hearing, do you think you'll have the votes?
Well, we completed the hearing. We're in the process of soliciting feedback and information from folks, give them a window to provide that to us. And then what I want to do is not simply write a good piece of legislation on paper. I want to get this passed. I want to get it through the House of Representatives, get 218 votes, and get it across the line in the Senate. We've seen a number of people put forward ideas and suggestions in this space, but fail to get it across the line. My goal is not only to come out with a good piece of legislation, but to be in a position to actually garner the support in the House and the Senate, because I think the American people know that we need to get this done, but don't let logic get in the way of understanding how Congress operates. And so we have a huge opportunity here. We need to get this across the line. The hearing yesterday was a good and positive first step.
So, okay, we'll see where it goes. Do you think you have any word from the Senate if they'll take it up?
Well, I think if we get the legislation right and we pass this in an overwhelming fashion in the House, we can force the Senate to act on this. We've seen legislation come before the Senate and fail before. But that said, 13 years ago, the Stock Act passed both the House and the Senate. It's when we get this right, we have the window to do it, build the public support. We know the public supports this. And as we come forward, we're going to have a real opportunity to ultimately get this across the line. Part of the Trump agenda, drain the swamp. This is an absolutely essential piece of that puzzle.
Do you think that 401ks that you usually get from your job and pension plans, do you think they should be? What do you do with that if you walk in with a 401k, which many congressmen and women will have? What do they do?
Well, this is exactly why getting the legislation right rather than simple is so important. When individuals have diversified portfolios, the likelihood and the risk is significantly lower. And so we're looking at that. There's about 7,000 ETFs, these financial instruments that are trading based on stocks. We have to make sure that we get all of this right, because the concern is that if we don't, members will use a loophole to financially benefit themselves. But again, individuals that had successful private sector careers, maybe are later in their career and have that 401k, a pension plan, funds that they've saved up maybe for their child's education. We want to make sure that those members can still come to Congress as well. And so that's what we're digesting. We're trying to get this right. And I think we got a real opportunity to do just that.
So there's a poll out by Fox, and it says when it comes to what party's doing what on the major issues, you guys are plus 29 on border, illegal immigrants, plus 16, reducing crime, plus 14, reducing budget deficit, plus 5. But making things affordable, you're down 10. Raising wages, you're down 14, and then reducing healthcare costs, you're down 21. How do you work on those numbers? And if you don't you agree that you're going to have trouble in the midterms?
Well, we have to work on affordability, and I think we are. The Biden administration made things so bad that you can't immediately flip a switch and make life more affordable, but we can make real and substantive progress. And I think as Republicans, we have to talk more about that, about what we're doing to lower costs for families. And in particular, grocery costs, lowering energy costs is a key driver. If you're from Wisconsin like I am, you know that it's a diesel tractor that's in the field. It's a diesel truck that's bringing that to the grocery store. And keeping your cold milk in that fridge is electricity that's often powered by coal or natural gas. The energy policies of the Trump administration, driven forward by Republicans in Congress and in the Senate, will ultimately lower your grocery costs. But flipping the switch, it's not as easy as that when you had 4 absolutely destructive years of the Biden administration of putting massive amounts of money into this economy by giving away money and paying people not to work, energy policies that were absolutely horrific. And so we are beginning to turn the tide on this. We got to talk more about the efforts and the work that's being done to make life more affordable. The inflation rate has come down, but it is not all the way down to a spot where life is affordable yet. we have to continue this work.
All right, Congressman Bryan Steil, best of luck. Thanks so much. First step taken.
Thank you.
So we're back in studio with the great John O'Hurley, actor, author, comedian, game show host. And now he's going to focus on many jobs. Host of the National Dog Show, it's a Thanksgiving Day tradition that airs on NBC right after the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. It's the 23rd annual dog show. How many have you done, John?
24th, actually. Yeah, this is our 24th year.
Your 24th year.
I've been there ever since the beginning.
Wow. And how has it grown?
Exponentially. We had the first year that we did the show back in 2002, we have, to everybody's surprise, we did about 19 million people. Today, we're up around 30 million. And every year it grows and grows and grows and grows. So as the rest of television is trying to find an audience, ours just, all you have to do is put the cameras on the puppy's eyes and that's it.
How do you explain it? How do you explain the growth in popularity?
I cannot for the life of
It's not like the dogs are new.
No, it isn't. But it's just that I think people, whether you're 4 or you're 94, there's something there for you. And everybody can sit down and watch, and it's something everybody agrees on. It's not as regional as football would be. And I think it just satisfies an audience that's yearning for something gentle and universal.
Well, and you love doing it.
Oh, I love doing it. It's just so much fun. I mean, there's 2,000 dogs. There are 2,000 of the top dogs in the country. They've all been champions at one point during the year. So you're seeing the best of the best. It really is so enjoyable. And it's the last bench show, which means that all of the dogs have to remain during the show with the owners and the handlers and what have you. So it's a very educational experience.
Have you met with any of these dogs yet?
Oh, sure. I interview them all the time. And you know what? Not one answers me back.
It's so weird. What about the owners?
They are exactly as you would think. This is their life. And if you go out into the parking lot out there, you'll see hundreds of these full bus RVs out there, and this is their life. They go from show to show to show to show, and they see everybody. They know everybody backstage. The dogs all know each other. It's a wonderful community.
Wait a second. The dogs all know each other?
Oh, sure. They all sniff. They all sniff around up there. That's what they do. But I will tell you something, and I want you to understand this, and I'm telling you something that only the experts realize. The dogs don't care who wins.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure. I've looked at these. This is 24 years of experience that brought me to this point.
They don't know that they won.
No. Well, there is an adrenaline rush, I will say. The dogs, as they enter the ring, it's like all of a sudden everybody's applauding and they respond to that. Yeah, they respond to that. Yeah.
So you have 1,800 of the nation's top dogs spanning over 190 breeds. What I'm amazed at, are we still coming up with breeds?
We are every year. This year we have the Swedish-Danish farm dog. I don't know how they
right.
I don't know how they came up with that name, but I'm guessing it's from Sweden and from Denmark.
And so, in other words, it's a mutt.
It would look like a generic dog until you realize the darn thing was bred for just about anything you can do on a farm. And they have they're small dogs, but they have a heart of a Sherman tank. You can't stop them from, if they have a mindset to do something, they do it. And they're bred to be hunters, herders, ratters. Remember the halcyon days of ratting?
Right.
Yeah, we don't do that much anymore.
We used to have dogs eat rats?
We had. That's what the terriers are for. The terriers go down the hole to grab the vermin.
Because there is a breed called the rat terrier.
The rat terrier, yeah.
And that's really what it's for?
That's what it's for. But also all the other terriers are for that too, and that's why I have the little stubby tails. You pull them out of the hole by the tail.
Wow. I did not know all this, but you do have to know what you're doing.
Well, over a period of time, you learn a lot. I've been very lucky to have David Fry, the most knowledgeable man in the world of dogs, at my side. So all I have to do is defer to him if I don't.
Madison Square Garden.
No, we're the Kennel Club of Philadelphia. So we shoot the show at the Greater Philly Expo Center out in.
Did you used to do it at the Garden?
No. That was Westminster that was there, and then they've been kind of jumping around trying to find a home.
Right, because they don't have it. No.
They don't have it.
So, the Knicks got good.
We have it. We have it. As I say, we've got 30 million people that watch us, so it's we're in good shape.
So you're out in L.A.
Yeah, I live out in L.A. in Lallaville.
I was just talking to Gary Sinise. He moved out to Tennessee. You talk to these comedians there moving out.
Yeah.
It is. I lived there for a while. It's always been the goal for so many people to get out to LA. It's exciting.
It is. Yeah.
You're still there.
I'm still there, and I'm reluctantly there. And we are Well, most of it was the fact that we had our son in school out there.
Yeah.
He's now at Baylor in aviation, and in his freshman year. So we now are scratching our heads, going, "There's got to be somewhere else."
But you know your neighbors. You love the climate.
We kind of mildly know our neighbors, and that's one of the reasons out there. Californians, we lived on a street in Beverly Hills and Jack Black was my next door neighbor, and darn if I ever saw him.
Really?
Yeah, we lived on the same street, probably exchanged the same mail that was erroneously delivered, and but that was the only time I ever saw him.
So you don't have that sense of community over it?
Not at all. I mean, I would love to, but it's not that we're against it, but you just don't out there.
There's a documentary out now about how slow the rebuild's been since the Pacific Palisades.
Absolutely.
And this is the rich of the rich.
Inexcusably awful. Yes, it is. Well, a lot of the problems have been that they won't grandfather, and they will no longer grandfather the sewer systems in. A lot of those homes out in Malibu and Palisades had old grandfathered in sewer systems, and that won't happen anymore. So you're spending $3 million before you even get to the surface.
And do you think a lot of people are walking away?
They're going to have to. Yeah, there's just no way that they can rebuild with the insurance money that they're being given, if they're being given at all. Remember, 1,200 policies were canceled about a month before.
Because the insurance thing doesn't balance out for the companies.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And you don't know how this little circle is going to end.
And the thing is, too, it's about the free market. We have this mayor-elect that thinks socialism is the answer. When you cap things, people will take action. If you're going to cap how much rent I could have, I'm going to keep that apartment empty.
Exactly.
We have hundreds of thousands of apartments empty here. So if you're going to cap how much insurance companies can charge, they're going to go, okay, I won't do business here. Yeah. Because not that they're being mean. I imagine insurance companies are in it, a lot of them publicly traded. Yep. I have to make a profit. How do I make sense of that?
Yeah, it's not possible.
I have employees.
Yeah. It's not possible, and it's a conundrum that's going to have to be fixed, because you can't have that type of land sitting out there overlooking the ocean and not doing something with it.
So here's the thing that I find so interesting. Because I remember I lost everything. I was in Malibu, living in the bottom of a house, burned to the ground, lost everything. But the good news is I had
remember that.
Yeah. And then you had Sandy. We had 3 feet of water. Most of my neighborhood was just flooded. So I know what it's like. Some people have money, doesn't have money. It doesn't matter. When you get flooded, fires, whatever, you're pretty much at ground zero, depending on how you're prepared. But my thing is, when you have this many powerful people frustrated, even if they have the resources, they can't build because they got to get employees and permits. Then I'm wondering, is that going to get through to their heads that this isn't a Republican or Democrat thing, that this is not helping people?
Exactly. That's all, and that's all I can say to it is exactly.
Yeah, I don't want to get you in trouble. But,
no.
Yeah.
It's not a question of getting in trouble. It's a question of absolutely agreeing with you. We are. It is a conundrum out there. The slowness of the permits that they said were never going to happen. Well, there's only half a dozen permits been issued.
So when you talk about things being shot in L.A., do you no longer have to, if in your business, do you no longer have to be there because there's so much outside?
I'm coming to the point where I really am realizing I don't need to be. A lot of the work that I do is voice work. A lot of it I can fly in for. I did 5 movies this year. I didn't do a single one of them in Los Angeles.
Really?
Yeah, not a single one in Los Angeles.
Can I ask you where you were?
All over. I was down in Atlanta, in Tennessee. Then I was in New York City. And then a couple of others that I don't remember where I was.
But it's not
there. Not there.
It would also, do you think that even though the whole wokeness really started in L.A., when everyone wanted to be politically correct, but I think that they were one of the first to pay the price when you can't get a key grip, and let's say they're a half Cuban with who are gender confused with a limp. So
it is, and it's also the Academy Awards demand now that you check all these boxes or you cannot be nominated for an Academy Award. It's absolutely silly.
But do you find that people become less political when they realize how it's hurting their occupation?
Yes and no. There still is people willing to walk into walls out there to protect the diversity, and I just don't get it. I don't get it. But I will say that as a white man at my age, it's difficult to work out there. There's no question about it.
Right, and much more difficult than when you broke in.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. It's like night and day. It's like night and day.
So the whole meritocracy, there was so much a part of acting and performing and singing, and the meritocracy. I think in many ways, acting is fundamentally that. If you're good, I don't care who you know, and if you know everybody and you're not good, you're not unless. the Scorsese thing and his kid was a different story, but it's really about performance and execution. And you're saying they've lost that.
Yeah, it has been. A lot of this has been funneled into making sure that it's we're checking boxes rather than putting the best people on stage for their talent.
Wow.
Yeah.
When you go to airports, most people think Peterman.
Absolutely.
Are you okay with that?
Oh, no, absolutely. Listen, the day that I complain about somebody recognizing me as Jay Peterman is the day the music dies.
Right.
It's was one of the great, most enjoyable things I ever had the privilege of doing, and the greatest cast that I ever could have been partnered up with. And we have a new audience today because, courtesy of Netflix, they bought the series, and now we have binge watching 14 to 20-year-olds watching the show for the first time.
How many have you seen?
Oh, I've seen them all. But I didn't watch it first run. I would not watch it because I was so frustrated by the way the show was edited, and they would always have these long, monotonous Peterman monologues in every show that would, he would go out there, take a right-hand turn, and never come back. And I enjoyed those so much, but then, you watch the show and it's not there because the show was too long. So we always had to trim the Peterman monologue. That was the first to go. So it's very frustrating.
How do you handle that?
I was just realize that you're blessed to be working there and have the best time you can, and just try to remember.
That is
I remember all the monologues. Let me put it that way. So 30 years later.
What is your technique for memorizing stuff like that?
I start with the verbs. You start with the verbs and then go to the subject. Look for the activity that each sentence is expressing, and then look for the who's doing it.
And then and do people at that level? I know writers are particular, but so you got the monologue, you got it, you got to read it, and think I'd rather say it this way, and you don't check with it, but you just do it your way. Yep. Do you find people, even though you write it, do it again?
It depends. Now, Seinfeld was the type of thing.
That's what I mean, Seinfeld.
Seinfeld was the type of show that if you could think of a funnier way to do it, try it. Try it. If it works, it's in the script. Nobody has any ego about, oh no, you're killing my line. No.
Curb Your Enthusiasm, famously, they say they ad-lib a lot of it. Like they go in there and they
can tell that that's all just stream of consciousness. And here's what we want to accomplish in the scene. And they're bullet points. And so that's what they do.
Did you do that in Seinfeld?
No. Seinfeld was tightly scripted. But you had the entire week of rehearsals to arrive at the point where you could have it tightly scripted. Comedy is better when it's tightly scripted because there's a flow to the line. Elaine, do you have any idea what happens to a butter-based frosting after 6 decades in a poorly ventilated British basement? I have a feeling what you are about to go through will be punishment enough. But you see, there's a cadence to it.
Your cadence.
Well, it is. It's my cadence, but there's. That only works if it's tightly scripted.
Do you think that there'll be a comeback for the sitcom?
For the sitcom, yes. For Seinfeld, no.
No, I know that. Yeah,
we were selfish 30-year-olds. I don't think selfish 60-year-olds makes a great fodder for comedy.
I just thought that was so interesting, and I think I might have brought this up to you before. I remember like Cheers and Taxi. They would have characters that you like, flawed but liked. Seinfeld made it clear, and I've never met him, but Seinfeld made it clear, I don't want you to like these guys.
We were not nice people and would sell each other out in a second if the opportunity struck.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you explain it? It's just funny's funny? Is that it? I mean, because
here was the thing. I remember getting up out of my chair after the first read-through of Peterman introducing himself to the show. And I called my manager and I said, this is the #1 show on television. It's not funny. And he says, just be...
Had you seen it before?
No, I hadn't seen the show before. And because I had my own series that was busy being canceled on ABC the day before. So I just hopped over to Seinfeld. But
same line?
It isn't the same. The thing that is peculiar about Seinfeld is you have to play it as a drama. It's got to be Streetcar Named Desire. You have to have that kind of ferocity and that type of commitment to the passion of what's being done in the scene, or it's not funny. So the more passionately you do the scene, and you look at George Costanza, I mean, there could not have been a more tour de force passionate actor than Jason Alexander. But he made that show because he was passionate about what George was, his dilemma.
Is that acting? Period. Because I've only taken a handful of acting. Is that what acting is really?
If you look at Golden Girls or something, they didn't have to suffer that type of thing. They could just set the joke up and deliver the punchline. But Seinfeld didn't have punchlines. We weren't a joke funny show. It was a situation that was funny, and the more passionately you play that situation, then it becomes funny.
And Jerry would be the first one to say, "I'm the least experienced actor."
Absolutely, and it was like just get my lines out of the way, and then just allow him to smile through the scene.
Oh,
yeah.
I forgot the sitcom that just came out and said they looked at Seinfeld, the way they held the phones from the 1990s.
Mm-hmm.
Remember they had the
antennas, yeah.
And they said they went out of their way not to show any technology because they never wanted to date it. Not that it's hurted in syndication.
It sure hasn't. And the only other thing that would date it would be the models of the cars. Jerry's Saab, I think, or an Audi or a Saab. Saab, I think, is what he had. But
right.
Yeah, that was that's the only thing that dated it. I think Kramer was the first one down in Greenwich Village to use a cell phone, and I think it was the only time.
John O'Hurley, I cannot wait to catch what I thought was the 23rd, but it's the 24th.
24th?
The 24th annual National Dog Show on Thursday, November 17th.
Dogs until 2?
27th, I should say, from 12 to 2, right after the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And that'll be on CBS, on NBC.
Yeah, we're going to move it over to NBC now.
You don't mind? Yeah, it makes sense. John, thanks so much.
Hey, it's always great to be with you, Brian.
Right? And maybe you should, I would recommend New York because it would be near me, but I wouldn't do it for the quality of life of your family.
I do understand.
You understand?
I do understand.
Back in a moment.